Order. I'm calling Doreen Fenton.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, Labor is strongly opposing this bill, and that was a most disappointing speech from the chair of the Select Committee, who sat to listen to something like 170 oral submissions, who travelled around the country from Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch and Palmerston North, and it's evident that the people that came before the Select Committee had no impact on that member at all. They certainly had an impact on the Labor members of the Select Committee, and I will always remember Christchurch. We went to Christchurch, where I have never seen anything like it in the Select Committee. Workers came before the Select Committee showing support for each other. They came waving their banners to show that they were opposed to this bill, and then they came forward and told their stories. And I have to tell that member over there that's shouting out, they cried. Jackie Dean, shame on her, because they cried. They cried about this bill. What they told the Select Committee was this was the last straw for them. They have been through the earthquakes. We had workers from a range of occupations, from the lowest paid to quite professional nurses and frontline response workers, a whole range of other workers who came forward, and they talked about how in the earthquake they went back to work to help other people. So the cleaners at Hillmorton Hospital went back to work and helped clean up the mess, helped the people that were coming into that hospital, and helped their workmates who were suffering because their houses had been trashed. Those workers from all walks of life have not been listened to by this government, and it's extremely disappointing, because I asked the Minister, Simon Bridges, late last year about whether he would listen to the submissions, and particularly the submissions around Part 6A, which is the provision that he is weakening thanks to his friends from Crest Clean, who sent the media unit a stupid mug last week. Actually, what it says is, don't go ahead with the amendments. Well, we agree with Crest Clean on that, but however, they want to be able to make sure that they don't have to employ vulnerable workers or transfer them from one job to another. Simon Bridges told me in answer to a question when I asked him about the workers at Hillmorton Hospital, who I said, and quite truthfully, that they were sick with worry about the changes to Part 6A because they feared they could lose their jobs, and that would be the last straw after the earthquakes had suffered. And he replied, in all seriousness, they can be confident that I am listening and taking this very seriously. Well, did he? Has Part 6A changed? No, it hasn't changed, except to make another group of employers exempt as well, which are franchisees who are not the parent company. So he's actually made it weaker than it was before it went to the Select Committee. The other person who I will never forget who came before the Select Committee was a home care worker called Julie Reason, and she was fantastic. She told the Select Committee that she earns between $14.10 and $15.86 an hour, depending on the nature of work. 90% of her work is at the lowest rate of $14.10 an hour. Well, lucky her, she will have gone up to $14.25 an hour with a miserable increase in the minimum wage. I drive between my clients' homes and then help them shower or dress or do their shopping or housework. My work is deemed to be casual, so I do not have guaranteed hours. The idea is that we build up a pool of regular clients and try to fill in the gaps in the day as best we can. Extra assignments are offered via group texts sent out to everyone and are grabbed on a sort of first come, first serve basis. I am not reimbursed for my petrol, my travel time or my vehicle wear and tear. Roughly 10 to 15% of my income goes on work-related petrol. Our terms haven't always been this generous. It's only recently that a free phone number has been provided so we don't have to pay for our own work-related calls and texts. And it used to be that if a support worker like myself arrived at a scheduled appointment and could not actually do the work because the client wasn't there, they would not be paid at all. Now, this Julie Reason told the Select Committee it was union pressure and union collective bargaining that made the tiniest bit of difference for her in her job. And what was really interesting about what Julie told us was about meals and rest breaks. Now, does Julie Reason and other home care workers like her get a tea break? They are not allowed to sit down with their clients when they visit home and have a cup of tea with them, because that would be breaching some kind of protocol. So she never gets a paid tea break, even though the legislation provides for it, and the government, unfortunately, is proposing to weaken it. She never gets a paid tea break. She has to pay for her own tea while she's on the road driving, if she's lucky, to the next client. She asked the Select Committee, she told the Select Committee, it's hard enough doing the work I do without having the government actively trying to undermine the bargaining position of my union and the union representing me. Why would a government want to make it even harder for me to earn a fair wage? And I will never forget the courage of Julie Reason and the workers like her who told their story to the Select Committee, who were ignored, who have been ignored, because apart from minor technical changes, this bill is as bad as it was when it went into Select Committee. There were 13,679 submissions. 13,679 submissions. Workers put a lot of effort into making sure they got their submissions through. There were complaints about the fact that the Select Committee didn't hear enough submissions, and in fact there was a people's submission process organised by the CTU so people could have their voices heard throughout the small towns and regions throughout our country. But of course, it's all gone for nothing because this worker does not take workers seriously. It does not believe that it is a struggle for some people, that our system that we already have of collective bargaining, our system under the Employment Relations Act, which this government has weakened through pieces of legislation after legislation since 2008, does not work for them already. And what this bill will do is make it even harder for those people, those workers on the margin, like the cleaners in this place, who earn just on minimum wage, who Tau Henare said, if they don't like it, they should get another job. Remember that?
That's right.
He had to apologise for it, but how disgraceful was that? How disgraceful to have a member of Parliament on a huge salary telling workers in this place who clean his office, if they don't like it, they should get another job. He should be ashamed, and I know he was actually, but that's the attitude of the National Party. Another little part of this bill, it's quite a big part of the bill, is the stupidity around the ability for employers to decide that they're not going to conclude bargaining. What that means, what it means is that workers will go to bargaining, the employer can come up with an excuse to drag it out and eventually apply to the authority to say bargaining has ended. Now, workers in that situation they immediately lose their collective agreement. They immediately go on to individual contracts, and what's more, they cannot strike for a period of 60 days, and in fact it's 90 days by the time they reinitiate. So we have a strike ban on workers who want to get a collective agreement. And then we have this petty thing that if they decide in their workplace, like Julie Reason, the home care worker, decides she doesn't want to go on strike because of those clients that she looks after, but maybe she won't take them shopping. That would be deemed a partial strike, and her employer could fine her 10%. So we've now got a stupid, pitiful, mean provisions in this agreement that are going to make it really hard for everybody. So Labor is deeply opposed to this bill, Mr. Speaker. It isn't necessary. It builds on the bad record of this government and the way it treats workers. It will not survive a change of government. In fact, it may not even get through by the election. It may not even get through by the election. And Mike Sabin saying there's not going to be a change of government. Well, I tell you what, bringing this bill to the House is the best thing you could have done to mobilise workers in this country against that government.
Speaker.
I call Denise Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.